mum, an old fur coat with a bird on top, a moving mass of unpleasantness. Good grief, what a mess! Eggshells, porridge, veal meringue. Is this Prince Amir up in jam? In toast and ketchup, you'll never guess. Oh no, what a mess! Though he's not a pretty sight, he really tries to do things right. With a mother who's tall and slim, I wonder how she ever thought of him. A shock-mad, scruffy Afghan hound, a more foul creature you've never found. A tangled bundle of bristliness. Good grief, what a mess, what a mess, what a mess, what a mess.
It was a beautiful morning. The sun shone warmly, small creatures mucked about on the grass, and birds twittered in the treetops. In fact, everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves. Everyone, that is, except What a Mess, the fat and rather smelly Afghan puppy of royal descent, who was having a very serious think. He was having it in his very serious thinking place, a dustbin by the old barn. Unfortunately, with What a Mess being rather fat and the dustbin being rather small and half full of kitchen rubbish, the puppy had trouble squashing into it. But it was warm and friendly in there, with interesting smells. So in one way or another, it was the perfect place for a puppy with some serious thinking to do. The only problem was that it was so cosy that every time he tried to think seriously, he dozed off. And when he woke up, he'd forgotten what he was supposed to be thinking about. So he trotted back to the house to get something to eat. He always did this when he was trying to have a think. Besides, it was nearly half an hour since he'd had breakfast. And his tummy was beginning to make peculiar grunting noises, as though a small monster was jumping around his insides. When What a Mess arrived in the kitchen, he found that the family had gone out. And since he'd already eaten all his breakfast and all his lunch, tea and supper, which the family had set out in little bowls for him, he suddenly felt hungrier than ever. What a Mess was used to 4 square meals a day and a light snack every half hour or so in between. The family had recently become worried that he was becoming rather fat and had reduced his portions, so What a Mess was feeling even more ravenous than usual. He searched through the refrigerator in vain, so he went into the drawing room. He thought he might manage to keep going for a bit on a silk cushion cover. But it merely seemed to get him more in the mood for a slap-up, early mid-morning get-me-through till 11's nibble. Then he tried upstairs. He rummaged around in the bathroom. All the usual things, like a funny tube of stuff smelling of peppermint, which he bit into, and a roll of pink paper, which he tried to eat, but which kept rolling away from him, like he'd seen it do in the television advertisements. By this time, the monster in What a Mess's tummy seemed to be stamping around harder than ever and growling, "Where's my food?" What a Mess felt so miserable, he howled and howled. And went to see whether he could find anything he'd buried in the garden.
This is super. This is the most big You're the best piece of work I've ever seen. I think this is going to be my favorite.
After a lot of digging, all he found was a rather small piece of leather with a ring and some funny metal things hanging from it.
Oh, yeah.
He also recovered a piece of paper with another piece of paper inside it. He remembered burying it after picking it up one morning from the front doormat. He chewed this for a bit. The gummy stuff was quite nice. It wasn't very satisfying at all. Watermiss went to his second favourite hiding place, where he could sulk in peace. But he was soon joined by the cat next door, who noticed that something was wrong. "What's the matter with you, then?" she purred. "I'm hungry," snapped Watermiss. "Hungry?" said the cat. "Yes," said Watermiss, "and in order to make the point clearer, I want something to eat." "You always do," replied the cat. "Not always," said Watermiss. "Mainly when I'm trying to do some serious thinking." "What have you got to think about?" asked the cat in a rather unpleasant way. So Watermiss explained how his food portions were reduced. "Why don't you please the family by performing some very kind deed?" said the cat. It was at that moment that Watermiss had a brainwave. It wasn't much of a brainwave, really, but to Watermiss, who'd never had a brainwave before, it was an important event indeed. He knew then and there exactly what he would do for the family. They'd always made meals for him, so in return, he would make a meal for them. He would make them a surprise lunch. The family were out shopping and had taken the puppy's mother with them, but would be back soon. So Watermiss had to work fast. He knew there was nothing edible in the house, but he'd often seen the man digging up plants in the garden, which the family had then eaten. Digging came naturally to Watermiss, and he soon gathered a clump of blue Russell lupin, geranium, and a small rhododendron, which all seemed much more colourful than the miserable green stuff the family usually ate. He dragged the plants back to the house and took them into the kitchen. Then Watermiss added some salad dressing. The nearest thing he could find was some engine oil from the garage. Watermiss had often seen flour being used in cooking, but he couldn't find any in the kitchen. He remembered having seen something very similar in the bathroom, which anyway had a more interesting smell. Watermiss then mixed up the concoction by jumping up and down on it. By the time the family returned, Watermiss had completely tired himself out and had fallen asleep in his basket with a tea towel over his head. In his sleepy state, he hardly heard the gasps of horror as the family discovered the mess in the kitchen, nor did he really hear the woman say, "Just look at our poor little puppy. He's so hungry, he's tried to eat the garden flowers. From now on, we will give you larger portions of food every mealtime." Watermiss closed his eyes and drifted gently back to happy sleep.
A compost heap, a kitchen mop, an old fur coat with a bird on top, a moving mess of unpleasantness. Good grief, what a mess! Eggshells, porridge, felt meringue. Is this Prince Amir up in jam? In toast and ketchup, you'll never guess. Oh no, what a mess! Though he's not a pretty sight, he really tries to do things right. With a mother who's tall and slim, I wonder how she ever thought of him. A short, fat, scruffy Afghan hound, a more foul creature you've